Hello everyone, today I'll be taking on all the new content that Rimworld Anomaly has to offer. By kidnapping foreign entities, draining them of resources, and then weaponizing them in order to beat the game's new ending. Standing in our way will be the hordes of voidborn creatures, non-consensual comas, and a slow descent into insanity as you try to figure out who is sexually transmitting parasites to all your colonists. With that being said, I'm going to be attempting to complete all the codex entries and conquering the void for myself. Our journey began with crash landing into this boreal forest. Upon landing, I gave my colonists the task of tearing down the local ruins and building a barracks. Alongside this slightly suspicious looking rock, we also started with a whole host of new equipment and Dave. As you can see, Dave isn't exactly human anymore thanks to this rock that has turned him into a ghoul. Ghouls are, quote, engineered murder machines that specialize in both regenerating health and melee combat. Fuck! Not to worry, because I trained him up by sending him out to punch the local animal population. And over time, we moved on from murdering squirrels to turkeys to finally drug addicts that fell out of the sky. Which, no, we couldn't give Dave the Luciferium, unfortunately. Anyway, enough about our resident ghoul. Let me introduce you to our other two researchers. Galloway, our Navy scientist and chief void provoker, and Jack, basically the guy that's going to be doing everything else, like building up our research complex, which now had a kitchen, a warehouse, and a containment room. And as you have probably guessed by now, this isn't just any old suspicious rock sat in the middle of our base. This is in fact an ancient monolith which was about to... With the monolith awoken, we gained access to the codex, which will allow us to keep track of all the entities that we encounter. Alongside that, we also got ourselves a new research tree. Now, to unlock these texts, we can't just sit behind a desk and throw pieces of paper about. Instead, we were going to have to get our hands dirty by analyzing contained subjects and other anomalous objects. And it didn't take long for us to get our first taste of the void, as a single Harbinger tree had decided to pop up. All you need to know about these trees is that they're evil, and they eat corpses. So, I think we all know what must be done.
We must feed the tree.
To satisfy the tree's hunger, I sent out our resident hunter to punch this boar to death, and then hauled the corpse over to the new stockpile. As Dave was returning to the colony, he was ambushed by a sight stealer, who was promptly dealt with and locked in our dungeon, containment facility. With the sight stealer contained, we were now able to begin studying the creature, and before long we had finally finished our first research, void provocation. This essentially allows us to poke the void into doing something by hurling insults at it. Shortly after the completion of the ritual, we had a singular zombie approach, so we had Dave punch it in the head repeatedly and then feed it to the tree. Moving on, we finally had completed our next research, bioferrite harvesting, which allows us to unwittingly suck the bioferrite out of our contained subjects. This resource isn't exactly useful right now, but later on will be crucial. So capturing more subjects so we can stockpile the resource early wouldn't be a bad idea. Thankfully, a disabled ghoul called Kevin fell out of the sky, so I scooped up his crippled body and tied him down to the floor. And as you can probably tell, this isn't exactly the best strategy for containment. What we needed was a proper containment facility. So I sent Jack to work, carving one out inside this mountain. Nice. With the new facility constructed and our holding platforms now with a reasonably high containment strength, it was time to fill it up. So I poked the void again and was promptly raided by some gore hulks. Now these guys excel in range combat, so I lured them into my house and had Dave punch them in the head repeatedly. And any survivors were locked up in my shiny new containment facility, where we began the process of sucking them dry for their bioferrite. Which, yeah, they didn't appreciate. It also turned out Kevin wasn't as disabled as I thought he was, but a shotgun round to the face sure changed that. The next couple of days were fairly uneventful. We had another sight stealer attack, which replaced Kevin's spot in our containment facility. We also finished our next research, Electro Harvester. This neat little piece of technology allows us to further exploit our subjects by drawing power from them. I don't know how, but it was all I needed to continue expanding our facility and luring new creatures over for containment. The next monster we encountered emerged from a small hole. It's a hole, which we lured over and once again knocked down for containment. Okay, no, we won't capture it. Following this, a rather suspicious man called Lester arrived, who may be useful, but there was something he wasn't telling me. He is 100% going to murder me in my sleep. You're telling me a man dressed up in full red, unusually good looking, isn't gonna be suspicious? So upon accepting him into the colony, we cut him open for inspection. Our surgical inspection showed that there was definitely something suspicious about him. So I decided that the best course of action was to just have him cut rocks for me outside the base. We, on the other hand, continued poking the void for our final entry in the basic codex. Death Pool. Now, Death Pool does two things. One, makes your screen dark, and two, resurrects all the dead creatures on the map. Which was not good because if you remember correctly, Dave has killed a lot of animals. And this was now going to bite me in the ass. Just kidding. What really happened was not a lot. Because if you remember correctly, all the animals I'd killed earlier either ended up in Dave's stomach or fed to the trees. So, when the death pool ended, it was time for the monolith to... With the monolith leveling up, we gained access to the advanced research tree, and 17 new ways the game could now fuck me. Starting with this much larger hole that decided to open up, holy shit, right next to my base. And after dispatching the locals, I realized that I couldn't just throw some dirt in this hole and be done with it. Instead, I was going to have to send a team down there to clear out the riffraff. However, with just a shotgun, a revolver, and Dave, it wasn't going to happen right now. What we needed was a bigger crew. But how are we going to recruit more people when the game so far had only thrown anomaly-themed events at me? Well, with skip abduction. Hey, Dumbo. But he's shocked for 17 days? This ritual allows us to kidnap a colonist every 10 days at the cost of about 60 bioferrite. However, there is a downside. Apparently, being kidnapped via a ritual knocks a person in a coma for a little while. So I stuck Dumbo in a bed for the time being and left my malicious plan of turning him into a ghoul for later. For now though, it was time to turn my attention to this very suspicious cube that just randomly appeared. Now at this point, I thought the cube was pretty good, as it allowed me to begin researching advanced techs, and was definitely not going to cause any issues later on down the line. Shortly after the arrival of the cube, another stranger happened to rock up to the colony. A lady named Harrogate who had the ability to turn people into flesh beasts, which was pretty suspicious if you ask me. Now I know what you're thinking, this isn't a very good idea, but I needed her and her researching ability because at this point, I hadn't actually completed a single research from the base game. So I locked her in a room with a sleep suppressor and left her to it. However, with her arrival, we discovered a piece of grey flesh, which upon analysing, we discovered that someone may not be who they claim to be. Now we know that Lester was slightly suspicious from the operation we did earlier, so I arrested him and threw him in jail with Dumbo, who couldn't be interrogated because, well, he was in a coma. In fact, I couldn't interrogate anyone because my colony had the combined social skill of a spanner. Galloway has 0, Jack has 0, Harrogate has 0. This might take a little while. So I ended up releasing Lester and dropping the entire matter, because an unnatural darkness had begun to settle in, and before long, the map had gone from this to this. Now I'm sure you're all smart enough to know that this wasn't just a visual change. In fact, anyone caught outside the light would be attacked by shadows, which wasn't too bad because all I had to do was hold up in my base and hopefully not run out of food. Dave, fucking just ate all the food! With our food stockpile now empty, our only hope was to sit around and wait for stray animals to wander too close to the base, in which I would then send Dave out to kill before dragging them back inside and devouring. During the night, we also had to make a couple of difficult decisions, like eating the Noctuals that came to attack us and, eating Dumbo, who just happened to unfortunately awake from a coma only to be butchered for our survival. Yeah, sorry Dumbo. During this time, I had also set up 4 research benches in order to speedrun researching hydroponics. And upon completion, I began the construction of our farm, only to completely forget how much power a sun lamp actually requires. Oh no! This was not good. But by almost divine intervention from Randy himself, it's over. It's finally over. The darkness, it's over. The long dark ended before the darkness could consume us. With the long dark now over, two things came to mind. One, we definitely needed more food production. And two, this cube was starting to become a little bit of a problem. Because if you look really closely, you may see more than one cube. This was because every single one of my colonists were now obsessed with it, which lowered their work speed and made them craft random cubes around the colony. But with no means to currently break the cube, I was just gonna have to suffer. Later on, a random sphere appeared out of nowhere, which we scooped up and placed in its own room for milking. And studying, of course. In which Galloway discovered that the sphere's only purpose was to inflict pain. But we could suppress it in the meantime. So currently, its only goal was to power my colony and give me some of that sweet, sweet bioferrite. Which at this point was being used to cast rituals and make some cool looking masks. And with that, things were going nicely. Until this happened. Oh! What is he doing? Someone stop him! Stop him! Just stab him! Oh, he's leaving! Where's he going? With Harrogate being sucked into a coma, I had to strike back. Now I knew that the Revenant would be hiding somewhere around my base. But according to the Codex entry, we could reveal it with either flares, which we didn't have, EMP, fire foam, or fire. So I opted for the latter and began burning down the entire forest. Set this forest on fire, I'm sure he'll come out of wherever he's hiding eventually, right?
12 seconds later.
Oh, why? Why have you got to make it rain? It's okay, because it wasn't long before the Revenant revealed himself again. But this time, we had managed to bait him into a large group of traders. Even with their assistance, the bastard managed to strike again, this time knocking out one of the traders, whose friends immediately departed and left me to look after him. With two victims now under his belt, I was hoping that he was going to leave me alone for a while. Oh, it's back! It's back! Oh, come on, not like this. Oh, come on! With both Harrogate and Galloway now incapacitated, we really needed to do something about this. Thankfully, after this attack, the Revenant left us a piece of flesh, which upon analysing gave us the ability to see the Revenant with our naked eye. So I sent out a search party to follow its tracks, and shortly after, we found the bastard. Now I can't express in words how incredibly painful this was to kill this fucking thing, so here's the entire experience of 3000% speed. But finally, after 15 minutes of chasing him with a shotgun, we finally killed him. Holy crap, finally! My lord! And everyone was released from its nightmarish grip. We were now presented with two choices. Either stamp on the spine and kill the creature for good, or contain it. Feeling proud of my accomplishment, I sat back and relaxed. Oh no. Yep. It broke out of containment, and then returned, and put Jack in a coma. Fucking hell. That took so long. Right. Smash it. Fucking not deal with that shit again. Now this had taken a very long time. Enough time for me not to notice that this obelisk had appeared on the map. And just as I was about to sit back and relax... we all just been kidnapped? Jack was okay. Harrogate, however, was locked in a room with a flesh beast. Just a little flesh beast. All he had to do was not make a fucking cube. Oh my fucking god. Why? With Harrogate being knocked down, I desperately tried to rescue him. But before I could arrive, he died. Oh, well, I guess he was the parasite all along. To get Jack out though, I had to force open a bunch of doors before finding the exit. And after acquiring some fancy loot, which included some Juggernaut serum, Jack was able to teleport back home, alongside all the little beasts, which all immediately began mauling him. But it's okay, because help was on the way. No, stop playing with the fucking golden cube and rescue Lester, you I think at this point, we all knew what had to be done. It was time to break the fucking cube. However, unfortunately for us, no one was willing to break the damn thing because everyone was obsessed with it. And judging by the amount of cubes that were constructed around the colony, you could probably tell how little was actually being done. So what I needed was an outsider. A little while later, a quest dropped down. A man named Simmons was being chased by two groups that both wanted him dead. So naturally, before both raids rocked up, Randy decided to throw a Gorehog raid at me for shits and giggles, before sending the next two raids straight after. And after a very desperate defense, we managed to repel the attacks. Immediately after, I got to work sending each one of my cube-obsessed colonists to separate corners of the map, and then had Simmons break the cube, which led to each one of my colonists going into a rage, where they all kind of just stood around and punched the local wildlife until they calmed down. With the cube's reign of terror now at an end, it was time to turn my attention to the sphere, which, if you remember, was contributing a large amount of power and bioferrite to the colony. However, a little while ago, I received a pop-up that said it could no longer be suppressed. And now, it was only 5 away from breaking containment. What I needed to do was find something to unleash this edged up pain upon. So I turned my eyes to the ancient danger in the top right corner of the map. And let's just say, neither I or the ancient humans expected the absolute reckoning which the sphere unleashed. At this point, I had come to the conclusion that I really needed to expand our means of defense. So I got Lester to produce a bunch of chain shotguns for me, and then after researching ghoul enhancements, had him produce some ghoul plating, barbs, and an adrenal heart. These upgrades turned Dave into an absolute menace, and I knew from this point, we needed more ghouls. Lucky for us, a man named Sparky happened to fall out of the sky. Now the problem was, he was in a coma, but I thought I'd try a little experiment and see if jabbing him with ghoul juice would snap him out of it. It did not, and Sparky's fate was to starve to death on the bedroom floor and then be fed to the trees. The next couple of months, I spent kidnapping more people and either enslaving them or turning them into my own little private army of ghouls. We also had another mysterious stranger called Glow arrive, who apparently didn't need to sleep. Things were moving quite quickly for us. The base had expanded, research was being completed, but a bottleneck had been discovered. All the rituals, ghoul serum, and enhancements all cost bioferrite, and I hadn't really expanded the facility since the start of the game. So I turned my eyes south to the mountain and had Glower and the slave dig us out a brand new facility. And just as I was finishing up the first room, a flesh heart appeared. Now the flesh heart in most situations is pretty fucking irritating, as it slowly engulfs the map in flesh and creates artillery pieces and hordes of flesh beasts that attack you. However, this was a perfect opportunity to fill up our new facility, as I could easily contain the masses of flesh with shotguns and ghouls. Then, capture any creatures that survived. And before long, my new facility had 2 filled containment chambers. With the bioferrite production now flowing and every tough spike that I tried to knock down dying, I finally decided to get around to destroying the flesh heart, which we could stick in containment as well. To celebrate, I decided to craft each one of my colonists a shiny new Hellcat rifle, which I tested out by venturing down the pit that had opened a while back and mercilessly burning all the creatures that were squatting under my colony. And if it wasn't obvious, I can confirm that these Hellcat rifles were really fucking good. Now I won't lie, I've skipped over quite a few things at this point, like the unnatural corpses, whatever these are, and the devourers, which, as you can imagine, devour things. Get them, boys. Motherfucker just ate Dave. I digested my boy. All you need to know is that I had completed the advanced codex and was ready for the final. Before I advanced to the ultimate stage, we were going to need to bunker up. So we accepted some refugees and began cutting down the surrounding forest and placing down some autocannons. Plus, I had also been creating a small army of enhanced ghouls, and after a couple of months, the preparations were done. Upon awakening the monolith, we were given a quest to activate 2 sets of void structures, while hordes of creatures assaulted our colony. So I had the ghouls defend the base whilst I sent Galloway out to activate the void structures. The first wave of activations weren't too difficult. However, the second was going to be significantly harder thanks to the return of our good friend, the Darkness. In preparation, I made a shit ton of Juggernaut serum and injected it in both my colonists and ghouls. With advanced healing, bonus melee damage, and an increase to movement speed, I was feeling pretty confident when the Darkness arrived. So I sent my colonists south again to activate the void thingy and left my ghouls to protect the base. During the excursion south, I lit a path of flares while fighting off the creatures that lurked in the darkness. Surrounding these structures were metal horrors, which were an absolute pain in the ass to kill, and after a long drawn out fight, we finally managed to secure the first one. This sadly was too much for Lester, who decided to have a mental break during the battle, and unfortunately we had to leave him behind. The next two structures were up north, so after a quick recovery, I sent the boys back out with the support of a few ghouls. The fight up north was significantly harder, as everyone was battered by the metal horrors and other creatures that lurked in the darkness. We ended up losing a large amount of our ghouls during this, and to make things worse, our base had been breached by all kinds of voidlings, who were now roaming around and destroying everything. But I did manage to get both the void structures activated, and what remained of my colonists crawled back and made refuge inside the hospital. And there we sat waiting for my remaining ghouls and colonists to heal up while the entire base around them was being overrun. Until finally, Galloway awoke. I then sent Dave and his ghoul buddy to clear out a path so that he could reach the monolith and touch it. Upon activation, Galloway was teleported away. In this dark plane, the only thing we could do was touch the void. So we did, and were presented with two options. We could either disrupt the link and put an end to the reign of terror that had been plaguing our colony, or we could embrace the void. Yeah, I think we all know what I did. I embraced the void, beat the game, and Galloway became a fucking god. Anyway, with that, if you liked the video, please subscribe, like it, and I'll see you in like 4 months when I upload again.